Hello everyone, I am going to do a tutorial for a 34-inch Rosebud lace button-up cardigan, and this is what I'm using, and it is called Utopia Crafts. That's where it comes from, Perfect Double Knit. I think I've only knit with this once before, and I found it's a very good wool to knit with, and it's 100% acrylic. And they suggest 4mm needles. I can't see anywhere that tells you how much yardage or meters is in this. So we're just going to have to see how far it goes. But I do have 5 balls of it, and 5 balls is plenty for a 34-inch. And I don't know what you call this colour. It doesn't say on the label. I would say it's more like a shocking pink, something like that. But I'm going to cast on for the back. For a 34-inch, you want it to measure 36 inches when it's finished. So for the back, I'm going to use, you can see the size on them. I'm going to use 3mm for the ribs, because I want the ribs to be quite tight, because I've noticed with a lot of things I've knitted for myself, I normally do them on 325 ribs, and they do tend to slacken off when they've been washed a few times. So I'm using 3mm instead, but I'm going to use 4mm for the body. It is hard to see the size on these needles because they're very, they might show up there a little bit. So they're not much different to the actual colour of the needle. And I have a few pairs of these needles, and I think I've got different shades of green. I'll have to get the right ones out. But anyway, you want the back to measure 18 inches. So the whole thing should measure 36 inches. That's 2 extra inches for ease. So for the tension is 5.5 stitches to the inch. So I am going to cast on 99 stitches so that the back will measure 18 inches. So I'm going to leave a long, I always leave a long end for sewing up, and then I wrap it up around the needle. So I'm going to make a slip knot, and I'm going to cast on 99 stitches. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and I will meet you when I get to the end of those stitches. And as you see, I cast on through the back. This is called cable cast on. I cast on through the back of the whole stitch. So that is 30 stitches I have. 31, 32. So you go through the back of the whole stitch like that. 33, 34, 35 through the back of the stitch. 36, and it's called cable cast on because when you look at it long ways, it looks like a cable. That's why it's called cable cast on, and that is my favourite way. That's the only way I will ever cast on. It was the way I was taught by my mother a long time ago. So I have cast on 99 stitches, and in case anyone asks, because a lot of people do ask, these needles that I'm using are Knit Pro Zings. That's what they are called. And I think they're probably about £4 or £5 a pair if anyone is looking to buy them, because quite a lot of people do ask me what these needles are. So I'm going to knit one purl, one rib, and when I knit my knit one purl, one rib, I do twisted rib, so I knit into the back of the knit stitch like that. And you just do an ordinary purl stitch into the back of the knit stitch, an ordinary purl stitch, and knit into the back of the knit stitch. And we're going to do 20 rows in twisted rib like that, and I will come back when I get that far. So this is how my rib is looking. I've knit 8 rows so far, so looking good. And if anyone wants to follow along with this pattern, I will be doing a little bit at a time and putting a little bit up on my channel, so it won't be the whole tutorial all at once. So just for anyone that may want to follow along, this is how 8 rows of twisted rib looks. Now I have done my 20 rows of twisted rib, and it measures 2 1/4 inches, so you can do more or less whatever you want the welt of the carding. If you want to do a few more rows if you want it longer, but that's long enough for what I think they should do. And if you've left a long end for sewing up like I do, just roll it around, put a stitch marker on, attach it to the bottom of the card, and that'll get it out of the way while you're knitting. And now I'm changing to the 4mm needles, and I'm going to knit 4 rows before I start the actual pattern. Just 4 rows in stocking stitch, so it'll be 1 row knit and 1 row purl. So that is all. As you can see, this is a knit row, and then I'll do a purl row. And now I am almost at the end of the row, and I'm going to knit those 2 stitches. And the last stitch on every knit row, the last stitch, I knit into the back of the knit stitch like that. And that gives a much neater edge. A lot of people slip the first stitch, but I don't do that. I don't think there's any need to slip the first stitch, but so that is one knit row, and the next row you're going to purl, and the next 2 rows after that is going to be 1 row knit and 1 row purl, and then I will come back and show you how to start the pattern off. So I have done the 4 rows, the stocking stitch, and now I'm going to start the first row of the pattern. And it is, you start off with plenty wool out. Knit 7, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And then we're going to knit 2 stitches together. Bring the yarn forward in front of the needle. Going to knit 1 stitch. Bring the yarn forward in front of the needle again. Slip that next stitch off the needle. Knit the next stitch. Pass that slip stitch over the top of the knit stitch. and that is the first part of the rosebud. Now we're going to knit 5 stitches. That is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and we're going to do the same as what we did there. We're going to knit 2 stitches together, bring the wool forward in front of the needle, knit the next stitch, wool forward in front of the needle again, slip the next stitch from the front, like that, and then knit the next stitch and pass that slip stitch over the knit stitch and knit 5 more stitches. I'll do that one more time for you. Knit 2 stitches together, bring the wool forward in front of the needle, knit the next stitch, bring the wool forward in front of the needle again, slip the next stitch frontways, knit the next stitch and pass that slip stitch over the knit stitch and then knit 5 stitches. And repeat those stitches all the way across to the last till you have 7 stitches left on your needle, and I will be back then. Now that was the last rosebud part, and now we have 7 stitches left, and we're just going to knit those stitches. And knit into the back of the last stitch. And the next row, is just a purl row before we do any more of the rosebuds. So we have to do 1 purl row in between the rosebuds. I will be back when I finish that. So that is the purl row, and the next row is going to be the little hole that comes in the centre of the rosebud. So we're going to knit 9 stitches across here first. One, 2, 3, 8, 9. When you do this row, you knit the stitches until you come to that centre stitch there. And that is where you do the next rosebud. Put your wool forward and knit the next 2 stitches together. And that makes that little hole there in the middle of those 2. Now we're going to knit another 8 stitches. 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and again we are at that centre stitch, so we bring your wool forward and knit 2 together, and knit another 8 stitches, 6, 7, 8, and again we're at that centre stitch, bring your wool forward, knit that stitch, and then you will knit 8 stitches again and keep repeating those, those stitches, the wool forward and knit 2 together, and then knitting 8, and then I will be back after I've done that. So I'm at the last few stitches. I'm going to wool forward, knit those 2 stitches together, And after that you have 2, 4, 6, 7, 8 stitches left. So you knit those 8 stitches. Knitting through the back of the last stitch. And that is the second row of the second row with the hole in. That's actually the third stitch to the pattern. And now we are going to knit and stocking stitch. So the next row will be row 4 to row 10. So we're going to knit 7 rows all together after this last row, before we start the next part of the rose pattern that comes in between those two. It comes in the middle here. So I will be back when I get that far. So we now have 7 rows, including the purl row after this part of the rosebud was made, and then we knit another 6 rows. So that is 10 rows from there to that part of the pattern. And now we're going to do the part that goes in between here from the middle. So we're going to knit 2 stitches. Next 2 stitches we're going to knit 2 together. Move forward in front of the needle. Knit 1. Pull forward in front of the needle, slip the next stitch, knit the next stitch, pass that slip stitch over the knit stitch. And that is the 2 holes made like those 2 down there. Now we're going to knit 5 stitches. And we're going to do that again. We're going to knit 2 stitches together. Pull forward in front of the needle, knit the next stitch. Pull forward in front of the needle, slip the next stitch. Knit the next stitch, pass that slip stitch over the knit stitch. Knit another 5 stitches. 2, 3, 4, 5. I'll do that one more time. Knit 2 stitches together. Pull forward in front of the needle. Knit 1. Pull forward in front of the needle again. Slip the next stitch. Knit the next stitch. And pass that slip stitch over the knit stitch, and then knit 5 stitches. And repeat those stitches all across the row, and I will be back at the end of that row. We now have 7 stitches left on the needle. We're going to knit 2 together. Pull forward, front of the needle, knit the next stitch, pull forward, front of the needle, slip the next stitch and knit the next stitch. Pass that slip stitch over and then knit the last 2 stitches, knitting into the back of the knit, the last knit stitch. And now we are going to do 1 purl row. So we're going to do 1 purl row, and then we'll be doing the single stitch over the top of the other 2 lace stitches. So we're going to purl this row. And now I'll be back at the start of the next rosebud row. And now we're on to the next part of the rosebud. So we're going to knit 1, 2, 3, 4 stitches, and be wool forward, knit 2 together. That is to make the single hole for the rosebud stitch. That's 1, 2, 3, 4. It's wool forward, knit 2 stitches together, and then knit 8 stitches up to the next rosebud. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and then we're up to that single stitch in the center of the 2 holes. So it's wool forward, knit 2 together, knit 8. It's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I will do that one more time. Wool forward, knit 2 stitches together, and then knit 8 stitches. 4, 5, 6, 7, that's 8. There you see how the pattern is coming out now, the 2 down below there and that one in the very center. So we just repeat those stitches across the row, and then we will do 1 purl row after that. And now we are at the last 5 stitches, and the wool forward, and I'm going to knit 2 stitches together and knit the last 3 stitches. That is the last part of the rosebud. Now we're going to knit 1 purl row, and then another 6 rows of knit 1, purl 1. Knit 1 row and purl 1 row, not knit 1, purl 1, sorry. And that will be the 20 rows of the pattern. And then you repeat it from row 1 again, and keep repeating until your work measures, well, I'm knitting to 15 inches, but whatever anyone wants it to measure up to. So that is how the pattern is going to look. We have another 6 rows to do, and then you'll start with this part of the pattern again, and that'll be another 20 rows. So it's every 20 rows you're going to have 2 lots of rosebuds in them. So carry on up to the armholes. My work will measure 15 inches. It depends whatever length anyone wants to do their own to, but that's what mine will be. And then I will show you how to do the shaping for the armholes up to the neckband. Now the back of the rosebud cardigan now measures 15 inches. So I'm going to start the armhole shaping. I have been knitting on circular needles, but I'll change to the single straight needles. It's easier for the tutorial for you to see what I'm doing actually. I'll put the tape measure away. Blow this up a little bit. So for the start of the armholes, I'm going to cast off 6 stitches on this side and the other side, on the first row and then the second row. So you just cast off, let the wool lay in the way, cast off 6 stitches. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So that's the first row, and then the second row, the start of the purl row, we're going to cast off another 6 stitches. But you also have to work out now where you have to put the rosebud, because before you were working on that row, you had 7 stitches before you started the rosebud, and that one you had 2. But it's changing now because you've cast off so many stitches. So to find out where you actually start the rosebud is you have to work out that there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There's 5 stitches that you're doing the rosebud over, and you also have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 in between that you're doing knit stitches. So you want the rosebud to fall in the center here. So you're going to be knitting stitches until, follow this. This was the slip one, knit one, and pass the slip stitch over. That was the end of the rosebud. So you follow that stitch there up to the needle. That is up to that stitch there. So you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 stitches up to, following that stitch down there to where the rosebud finished on the row below, and that is where you start your next rosebud. So you're going to knit 2 together, wool forward, knit 1, wool forward, slip 1 stitch, knit 1 stitch, pass the slip stitch over, and then we are going to knit, you're going to knit 5 stitches. That'll be over those 5 stitches where you follow that stitch down again, and that's where the rosebud was on the row below. So those are the 5 stitches that you're going to knit now, and that's how you work out where to put the rosebud. 2, 3, 4, 5, and then you'll start that rosebud again and do that until you get to the end of the row. So you've come to the last few stitches on the row where we will be doing rosebuds, but because we're going to be casting stitches off on the other side, we're just going to knit straight to the end. And so now we're going to cast off stitch 6. We're going to cast off 6 stitches purlwise. I'll put that needle down, get my other zing one, wherever it is. It helps to have these things handy when you start. So I'm going to cast off 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then we're just going to purl across the rest of this row, and I will be back when I get that far. So that is 6 stitches each end cast off, and now we're going to cast off 2 stitches at the beginning of the next 4 rows. Oh, my telephone ringing again. So like I'm saying, I'll cast off the 2 stitches at the beginning of this row and show you how to find where the rosebud. It's quite simple on the second row of the rosebud. So that's 1, 2, and now we have to knit to the rosebud, and we knit up to this centre stitch in the rosebud, so that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 stitches we're going to knit. And so those 2 stitches there, the other ones that's going to be knitted together. So we put your wool forward, knit 2, and then carry on doing the 8 stitches in between. That's 6, 7, 8, and then you're at that centre stitch again there. We wool forward and knit 2 together, and that's how you'll carry on across that row. Knit 8 and then do the rosebud, and then you're going to cast off 2 stitches at the start of the purl row and then do that again on the next 2 rows. So that's 4 rows all together. You're casting 2 stitches off at the beginning of the row. And we now have 79 stitches, and we're going to keep decreasing on each end, just 1 stitch on each end on the next 4 rows until we have 71 stitches. That's on every row. So we're going to knit into the back of the first 2 stitches, and then just carry on knitting to the end of the row, to the last 2 stitches, and then just knit those 2 stitches together. We are at the last 3 stitches. To knit 1 and knit 2 together. In the next row, we're going to do the same. We're going to pull 2 together, and just pull to the last 2 stitches. So we're at the last 3 stitches. I'm going to purl 1, and now I'm going to purl through the back of the loop. So I'm putting the needle through to loosen them a little bit, because it's rather difficult to get through, to go through the back. And you're purling through the back so that the stitches go inwards that way. If you just pulled them straight forward, they'd be facing out that way. They'd probably be hidden when you sew them anyway, but that's the way I do when I'm purling 2 together on the end of a row. So you're going to do that again for another 3 rows until you have 71 stitches left. That's knit 2 at the start of the row, and just knit 2. Well, you knit 2 through the back of the loop at the start of the row, and then knit 2 through the front of the loop at the end, and the same as what we did on the other side. And you'll have 71 stitches left. And when you start knitting again, you will have to work out where to put the rosebud, but I'll come and show you that then. So we now have 71 stitches left, and are going to carry on knitting until the work measures 7.5 inches up to the shoulders. But your next row is a row where you're going to have to place the rosebud. So And as I told you before, this stitch here where you have the holes at the bottom, and that is where you knit, where you slipped one and passed the slip stitch over the knit stitch. That is where the rosebud stitch ends. So you take that stitch up to your needle. I think it's the third stitch in it. So you will knit 3 stitches, the first 3 stitches. That's what I showed you, those 2 stitches that are knitted together there. You follow those up to your needle, and that is where the actual knit stitches finish. So you're going to knit 3 stitches first. And then you're going to place the rosebud in between that stitch and that stitch in the center. So you're going to knit 2, wool forward, knit 1 stitch, wool forward again, slip the next stitch, knit the next stitch, pass that slip stitch over the knit stitch, and then knit 5 stitches. 2, 3, 4, 5. And then you're going to place your next bud and so on until you get to the end of the row, and you will knit 3 stitches at the end of the row. Because when you get to the end of the row, that is your 2 stitches knitted together up to the needle, and that leaves you with those 3 stitches to knit. And then you will knit a purl row on the other side, and I will come back and show you where to put the stitch for the center of the rosebud. So we are on to the second rosebud row, and we're going to knit 5 stitches. 2, 3, 4, 5, until we come to that single stitch in the middle of the 2 rosebud holes, and it's wool forward, knit 2 together, and then knit 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and again here are those 2 holes in that center stitch, and that's how it goes until you get to the end of the row, and you will be knitting 4 stitches after you have done the 2 stitches together. Those are the 2 stitches that you'll be knitting together at the end, that one and that one. So will be 1, 2, 3, 4 stitches left at the end of the row. And that is how you work that rosebud. I've shown you how to find the place you put the rosebuds in between that stitch there and that stitch there on your next one, so that comes in the center of those 2 stitches between where you have those 2 stitches knitted together on each side. So carry on until your work measures 7.5 inches, and I will be back then to show you how to do the shoulders. So I have now done, here's up 7.5 inches to the armholes, and my 7.5 inches is counting from here where I started the rosebud. That's 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 and 4 inches of the rosebud. So I've done 54 rows. That gets me to 7.5 inches. So the rest is all just plain knitting because there won't be any more rosebuds done. And I'm going to cast off 10 stitches at the beginning of the next 4 rows. That's 1, 2, 3, 9, that is 10. So that's 10 stitches cast off there. I'm just going to knit across the row now. So that is the first 10 stitches, and now I'm going to cast off 10 purlwise. It's 1, 2, 3, 9, 10. That's the 10 stitches cast off, and now I'm just going to purl all the way across that row. And when I finish that row, I'm going to do the same again. I'm going to cast off another 10 there and 10 there, and I'll be left with 31 stitches, and I'll show you when I get that far. So that is all 4 rows done with the 10 stitches cast off at the start of each row, and I'm going to put what's left, which is 31 stitches, onto the stitch holder. That is all 31 stitches onto a stitch holder now. And just so you can see it better, flat out on the floor, and as you can see, it measures 18 inches, which was what I wanted. So that is the first part of the knit along tutorial, and I will show you more when I get more of it done. So I'll be putting this first part up on my channel, Sheila's Just Knitting.